Toby, how are you? I'm tanned, rested, and ready to talk about digital marketing. Let's dig into it.
This is the 20-Minute Attorney Business Development Podcast. My name is Tobi Steinemann, and here with me to discuss digital legal marketing is the man who just returned from a week at the beach, Bill Burns.
It's nice to be back, but after you're back about 24 hours, it's like you never left.
I can imagine. So maybe first, before we start, what is it that we're going to be discussing today? So basically, it concerns everything that we do online to gain visibility for ourselves in order to demonstrate our expertise through content and with a goal to connect to our target audiences. So potential clients, potential referral sources, colleagues, but also partners. And what some firms often forget is legal talent. So that's basically the target audiences that we're trying to reach through through the digital channels.
And Toby, unfortunately, I find that, as important as it is to have this digital presence that works for you when you're doing everything else, whether you're servicing a client or lying on the beach, I find a lot of attorneys are reluctant to completely invest in it.
In the digital space, you mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's probably because there's a little bit of a wrong idea about digital legal marketing. But when you actually look at it, it's exactly the same as traditional legal marketing. Legal marketing, in my view, always has been about four things. So it has been about content. So you give speeches, you connect to people through your articles, you demonstrate your expertise through content. It's exactly the same in a digital space, just different formats. It is people marketing. So you're trying to present yourself, you're trying to connect yourself to a specific expertise. It always has been about networking and relationship building. Again, exactly the same, be that on LinkedIn or through other channels. It's the relationships that you're trying to create and maintain through digital marketing. And it has been about word of mouth and referral marketing. So that's also what we're trying to achieve through the digital channels in marketing, is to increase the probability of such referrals.
But at the same time, I find that too many attorneys, even the most simple part of digital marketing, which I think the most fundamental part is having a very strong bio. A lot of attorneys, have a one paragraph bio that doesn't do much to differentiate or distinguish them from their competition.
So what are typical mistakes that they do there?
Well, I mean, the first mistake is just not having a good bio. I mean,
Yeah.
just not putting any effort into it. And I think in some cases they may feel like, well, I need to be modest. I don't want to promote myself, but you actually need to let people know who you are and what it is that you can do. The second mistake I see is that people, okay, they get in a bio, they put it up, they don't update it for years. And, it can be grossly out of date, can be, leave out huge portions of your expertise that you may have developed over time. And it just gives off the impression that, you're not paying attention, which is not the impression you want to give.
I mean, that's absolutely true. And I think it has become more complicated in the digital space because there's just so much and it's such a broad space. Back in the days where everything was printed and it was all physical, you had one resume and or like a business card and a physical printout of a CV. And was the one thing that you had to maintain and update. And now you have a LinkedIn profile, you have a profile on some magazines where you published, you have your own website, you have so many, you might have a newsletter, etc., etc. So you need to make sure that all these areas and channels are constantly updated. And that as a whole thing starts to build as a whole digital footprint that you need to maintain and take care of. And I absolutely agree. It is absolutely necessary that you keep checking your digital footprint and make sure that it consists of what you actually want it to be. And if that's not the case, then there is something that you have to do. And that's what we're trying to talk about today.
So how do we encourage attorneys to spend the time? How do we encourage them to invest in it?
I think the best way to do that is to show successes. So cases where that has worked and the potential for these kind of efforts to exponentially work for them. So you invest time, but then that's the idea of the whole content marketing, that you can grow it exponentially and it can work for you over time without you having to put in additional effort. So you have content on your website that people find, you have your social media profiles that reach a lot of people. So I think these kind of successes and techniques that will make it easier for them to actually trust it.
I work with a partner who had a one paragraph bio that fell very far short of describing what this individual does. I worked with him. I rewrote his bio. We posted it. And about 3 weeks later, I get an email from him. He actually forwards an email from a prospect. And his note to me was the benefits of a well written profile. And I scrolled down, and here's someone who found him online, found the particular expertise he has, and wanted to engage him in a matter. So it does
Yeah,
work.
yeah. So does it happen a lot to you that as a firm that you actually get hired or get requests for projects without having a connection to a person and they just find you online and then try to hire you?
I would say it probably happens just about once a day, you know? I mean, it happens all the time that we get an inquiry from someone that we don't have a relationship with based on something that they saw on our website, or they saw an individual's bio, or from an individual's article.
Yeah.
I work with a female partner who tells a story about how she received a pretty sizable matter because of an article that she had written that was published 8 years before this individual called her.
It's funny how the digital content actually, it used to be something ephemeral. Do you say that? Something that just disappears and is not, it's not sustainable or lasting. But
Right.
now actually with these search engines that just never forget, it's there to stay. Whereas physical articles that are just printed in some magazines, they disappear in some libraries and they're never to be found again. So in that kind of way, the content that you publish online is much more sustainable.
We have 2 attorneys who are in our appellate practice who have a pretty successful blog online about appellate issues.
Mm.
And that evergreen nature of the information is really important to them, because if you think about it, appellate issues don't pop up every day. You
Hmm.
know, it's not a bit, you're usually not kind of trendy. They're very discreet. So they've created this library of topics that lasts forever, and they get, inquiries from people because these things pop up from time to time, but they're not always in front of people's attention. So that has worked very well for them to have this repository out there that people can access, and it connects those people to these attorneys. It's a very good strategy.
Yeah. I mean, there's different scenarios. So there's those clients who already know, okay, I have a problem and I need an attorney to solve that problem. So they're looking for an attorney. And these people, they either search on Google for someone if they don't have anybody that they can ask for a recommendation, or they search on LinkedIn or something. So they are searching for an attorney in particular. But then there's a whole group who doesn't really know that they need an attorney to actually solve a problem. So they're starting to think about, okay, can I do this by myself? So they start Googling or asking artificial intelligence agents. And then at some point, they reach a point where they find information that is helpful to them, but will not actually solve the problem. So there's still a step that they need to take. And for that step, they need an attorney. And who do they call? Probably the person that provided them with an interesting piece of information. So that's kind of the strategy there. But in both cases, at some point, they will look at your digital footprint. So that the way you structure your online marketing and your online communications is absolutely essential in terms of business development, either to convert the people that already heard of you or find you online and know they need an attorney, and to also convert the people who are trying to solve their problem without understanding that they need an attorney at that point.
And it's very important for young attorneys to build a profile that way, to gain a reputation in the marketplace for having a certain type of expertise or experience. And by writing articles and getting published and having stuff online, they can establish a digital footprint so that they have credibility when they're trying to develop business.
Yeah, it's funny. We just before we started recording the podcast, we discussed here that gaining trust, and that's what it's all about, right? We're trying to gain trust for our expertise, and that we're kind of the people who can solve a specific problem is actually a function of expertise and visibility. So you need the expertise and you need the visibility. And if you have that over time, then at some point there will be trust, right, between you and the people that you communicate with. So you need both. If you're
Right.
just an expert and you're not visible, then there won't be any sort of success. And if you just have visibility without the expertise, you might get an opportunity, but at some point your potential clients will realize that there's no expertise behind it and they will not hire you.
It's absolutely true. That's absolutely true.
What it also says is that this kind of online visibility, it's a currency. these days, right? You're competing with other law firms, with other technology tools now for the attention of people online. And if you have that visibility, then you have an edge over your potential competitors. And this online space is getting more crowded and crowded every day, because firms have realized that it is worth investing in that area. And some lawyers are actually scared because it is that crowded, and they say, okay, LinkedIn is already it's overboarding with people who are posting stuff. But everywhere lawyers go, there's going to be other lawyers, and in most cases there's going to be lots of other lawyers, but they still go, and it's still worth it because you build some relationships. So I think it's, even if you if it seems crowded and it seems difficult to find a space to make a name for yourself, still show up and still go, still do it. It's the same with all the offline networking activities. It pays off to actually be there.
I absolutely agree. And you brought up LinkedIn, and coincidentally, this week, a colleague of mine met with 3 of our summer clerks. None of the 3 were on LinkedIn. Ironically, the same day I met with one of our younger associates, not on LinkedIn. And in all 4 instances, they expressed kind of a hesitation about getting on LinkedIn. So I think even, we kind of
And what are the
assume that
hesitations that they have?
I believe that what's coming through from these individuals is that they're kind of turning away from social media a little bit and not understanding how to use it in a valuable way.
Mm.
And that's why we have to focus on, what are the things that you think someone should do? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you separate yourself from that big crowd that's online now that you just talked about?
In one way, you can't really blame them for getting off of social media. I mean, there's so much bad stuff happening, so it's kind of understandable. And we're probably waiting for a generation that will come and say, okay, social media is gone, and we're not going to put up with it. But for now, it's still a valuable source, especially LinkedIn for lawyers. I think if you build an online marketing strategy without being on LinkedIn, that's a risky game.
I absolutely agree. I've been on countless calls with prospects or clients where we've mentioned an attorney, and you can tell that the person on the other end of the call, or even in a meeting, is looking up that attorney either on the firm's website or through LinkedIn, just to check their credentials, just to check that they are who they say they are, that they have the experience that you're saying that they have. All of that's very important. It's an important reference point. So how do you differentiate? How do you separate from yourself from all this noise, all this crowd that
Mm,
we find in the digital world?
mm. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, to give an answer that, or a specific answer that is true for everybody. And there's different channels that you can play around with, obviously. But I think essentially it's about 3 things that you can maybe say it's that everybody should apply. The first one would be I call it to be bold. So to have some sort of courage and awareness for your own strength and your capabilities. And I don't only mean the legal ones, and also the courage to not be afraid to show it. So have that sort of backbone, to have an opinion and some values. And I don't mean to be loud or aggressive or annoying. That's, people sometimes mistake the one thing for the other. The second one would be to be yourself. So have a clear idea about the identity of your branding, how you want to be perceived, and then do what you like, do what's fun. Because if you don't enjoy it, then you will stop at some point. So you and I are a good example. I didn't think a year ago that I would be having a podcast with an American business development executive. But now here we are, and we're doing it because we like it, and sort of that's why we stuck with it, right? And then the third part would be to be clear, and that's what we mentioned in the beginning. So to check regularly what it is that we're found for, that we're associated with in the online world. Go beyond your own profile on the website. Ask Google about yourself. Ask your AI agents about yourself, and see what you find. And if you see that something is missing, then there's work to be done. If you see that there's some outdated stuff, then there's work to be done. So I think this online footprint really needs to be clear and also focused on your key areas. Just because you had a case in one specific niche kind of law practice, it doesn't mean that you have to put it on your website as a specialty, for instance. So really make sure that it is focused so that you understand it, your target clients understand it, and the technical tools that crawl your profile understand it as well.
That example you gave of, just because you have a case doesn't mean you have to put it online and be part of your profile. A part of that is there are certain areas of the law, and all of our attorneys on listening to this podcast fully understand this, or I hope they do fully understand this. But there are certain areas of the law that are very niche in terms of the expertise and the experience that's necessary to execute successfully. And if you don't have that depth, and if you try to promote yourself as having, that strength based on just one experience, someone who is really experienced in that area of the law is going to see right through you immediately, and it's going to destroy your credibility. So you have to be very careful about what you put on there. So, when you said be clear, absolutely. And I
Mm,
would add to that, be specific. One of the
mm,
things that I find that attorneys don't do often enough is communicate what type of industries in which they've advised clients. When I worked in the auto industry, to get in the door, you had to have experience in the auto industry. If you were someone who had never represented someone in the auto industry, you weren't going to get even a 5-minute conversation. And so I think it's very important to have that type of specificity in what you're presenting to the outside world.
mm. On a lot of websites, I see though that firms they confuse industries with practices, so they sort of mix that in a list. I have experience in contract law and I have experience in automotive industry. So and you look at it and say, okay, one is an industry, one is a practice. We sort of need to clean that up, right?
Well, we think of when we're inside firms, we think in terms of practice groups, but our clients don't think about practice groups. They think about problems. So I have a contract problem and I'm an automaker, so I need someone who understands the contractual issues that I might run into in the supply chain that I'm working with, for example. That's the way they think about it, where we think about, well, it's a contract issue. So that's our corporate department.
And that's exactly where the digital marketing comes in, right? Because you can provide content to solve problems and address issues in a way that the client thinks about. And that's why you also have to think about, okay, what would the client search for instance, if
Right.
they have to they solve a problem, what would they be looking for? And then not only in terms of search engine optimization, because you want to be top of Google rankings or etc., but also if they find it and read through it, that it's actually applicable to them and that it makes sense. So the way you write it, and I think that will become more and more important even on social media. It's not only about visuals, it's a combination of the two, right? The content needs to be specific and relevant and interesting, and not just a sort of, okay, these are the requirements for A, and if you don't have these requirements fulfilled, then the consequences will be B, and that's it, right? It has to be really, really specific.
Yeah, the whole thing about SEO, search engine optimization, is, yeah, it's great to be at the top of the Google list, but really the key is that you have the depth there, that you're communicating specifically what strengths you have, what practice experience you have that relates to what the client needs.
Mm.
That's the whole point of it all.
Yeah, essentially, you're trying to gain visibility. Again, I think on the technical side, I would also add the tracking efforts. So whenever you do something in a digital environment, you should make sure that you know what you want to achieve and then track the right metrics, and then also be able to read the metrics the right way, and in order to then optimize what you do next, right? So that's actually the advantage of the whole thing, that you can try something and then try to do better next time. You can improve a lot if you do that the right way.
Yeah, that is one of the advantages of the digital world, is that you have metrics.
And then there's obviously, aside from the technical, if we want to be specific, right? I mean, just to give a bigger list of things that you can and should do. So there's like the absolute basics, like you said, the portfolio website that you build. So making sure that there's like the basic information that you need about the firm. You need a good Google business profile. Surprisingly, that's also something that a lot of firms, they don't really look after well enough. And then there's the whole community building and engagement side of things. So social media, go after LinkedIn first. And then once you know how to do that and it works well, then you can think about a second one. Don't do everything at once. Then there's the newsletter option. And I think that's still one of the most successful tools to actually build a well-working community, even though many people think that newsletters are annoying and nobody reads them, but that's just the bad newsletters that go right to the trash. And then obviously other activities like webinars, podcast, third-party platforms where you can publish content. That's also something that you should consider.
We definitely have to be in favor of podcasts since we're doing one.
Yeah, exactly.
If all that is overwhelming to you, and you think, well, we have portfolio website and a newsletter and all this other stuff, LinkedIn, just if you do nothing else, then just have a really strong, up-to-date bio. That will, that's the most essential building block to building a digital platform. And to emphasize that point, I think anybody who's listening to this podcast who's in business development and marketing and has website statistics will tell you the answer to the question of what is the most viewed part of any law firm's website. It's individuals' bios by a factor of about 5 or 6. It's hugely the number one spot that people land. So if there's no other reason to have a very strong bio, that's it right there, because it can be the front door to new opportunity.
It's also where digital tools learn most about you, right? Even if you don't care about the people who actually access your profile, think about the digital tools, because that's where they will actually learn about you and then recommend you to people who are on the hunt for attorneys.
Absolutely.
And yeah, obviously, I mean, it depends on your resources, right? So you have to be clever about it. The recommendation is not to do everything. If you're a big firm, then you have a lot of resources or more resources, then you can probably do a little bit of everything. You also have different lawyers who like to do different things. So you can make sure that the brand is sort of taken care of and entertained through different resources. And if you're a smaller firm or an individual lawyer, you have to make choices. You have to focus on some things. You can't do everything.
Absolutely.
All right, Bill. So this was a quick tour through the world of digital legal marketing. Thanks for your insight. And I look forward to our next session, which will be our last before our summer break.
Looking forward to that summer break.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
Toby.